Hey guys, Saintt and Loony here, coaches of the Minnesota Rokkr. In today's video, we're just going to give you a breakdown on what we're looking for with the release of the Call of Duty title.
Going into a new Call of Duty, I think the number one thing that most players, coaches look at is just what maps we'll be playing, what maps are compatible for the game, because some can just be extremely large and we just count them out instantly. So I think that's one of the big things that we look at going into a new game.
Yeah, looking for good maps is always key. I haven't found one in quite a few years, but hopefully we have a few.
There was a couple in the beta that could. I think the one thing that I noticed was in hardpoint, some of these maps had like 8 hardpoints, 9 hardpoints. And even like the smaller maps had so many hardpoints, we can trim that to 4 or 5 hardpoints. I think some of these maps could work. That one in the beta, obviously there's more.
Yeah, the beta definitely had around 2 maps
or so.
12? They always say it's like 16 or something like that, but then a few of them are inevitably ground war maps or like gunfight. But yeah, based off the beta alone, I do think there's probably just 2 maps from the beta that seemed pretty viable for comp, I would say.
I mean, nowadays, is there a trophy? Which we do see that there's a trophy, because obviously that's been a huge topic of discussion with these past titles, whether they have a trophy, not have a trophy. And I mean, I guess the obvious answer is just what guns are going to be meta.
Yeah, and the meta guns, that's something that usually changes, I feel like, after the first 4 weeks of a title. There's always one gun that's just ridiculously OP at the beginning of the game, and it either gets GA'd or it gets nerfed to the ground. I mean, we've seen it time and time again. In World War II, at the beginning of that game, teams were running 4 bars off the start. Then it got nerfed quite a bit.
FG42s.
Oh, wait. No, at the very beginning, like the first like 2-3 weeks, it was 4 bars. Yeah, first like 2-4 weeks, it was like everyone was just running 4 bars, and then when that got nerfed, then people started running the PPSH and the FG42.
Must be blasted. I did not remember that.
Trust. Find an old VOD from like the first 2 weeks of that game. 4 bars on like every map. The gun was insane.
Well, I mean, even just looking at Vanguard, I remember everyone started off with STG, right? It was STG, STG, and then some people started running the auto, and they're like, wait, auto is way better.
Well, no, I think people would just realize how janky the headshot multipliers and everything were on the STG, and once people took off the attachments that gave you all those headshot multiplier buffs and like the body damage buffs, then they're like, okay, the auto might be a little more viable.
Yeah, I think those are kind of the major things we look at going into a new game.
Some things I'm looking for in MW2, I'd like to see a more fleshed out style S&D. Preferably have some smoke grenades that work well and aren't abusive, able to one-way. Want some clean smoke grenades. I would like to see a bit more weapon variety when it comes to S&D. 1 viable sniper, like 2 viable ARs. I think 2 viable SMGs would be a really interesting meta to run with. We haven't really seen anything too fleshed out in Call of Duty recently, so I'd like to see a bit more variety and a bit more ways to play the game.
Yeah, for me, I know it was touched on a little bit, but apparently the game's gonna have like map editor. And I've always said, especially like back in Cold War, the map that sticks out is Moscow. Just being able to trim the fat out of a lot of these maps of just a whole bunch of useless space. I know, what was it called? Museum. A lot of people didn't like it, but I feel like if you can condense that map, it won't play awful. So I know that there is some sort of like map editor that's going to be added. Obviously, it's not going to be like a Forge of Halo, but even if you, like I said, you can trim some of these maps, I think that would help the competitive side of things a lot. Because like I said, a lot of these maps sometimes just have empty space that's not used, but pros will start using them just because why not? And you saw that in Moscow. Sometimes people just played the deep depths of the map to hold spawns on like I think it was like the P3 on Moscow. So I think if the map editor can be viable, it would be huge.
Yeah, in terms of being able to trim down maps a little bit, you saw a lot of useless space in some of the MW maps from the original game. I think Arkloff Peak is one that really sticks out. There is basically a second map layered inside the map that no one even used. So just being able to cut off the edges of the maps and just some of the useless dead area deep in the spawn points, I think it would make some of the maps flow a lot better. But we haven't seen all the maps in the game yet. It's always really hard to predict how a Call of Duty games can play out until it's been out for a few weeks. Even those first few weeks of the game, it completely changes after that. And once people learn the routes and the lanes, You see a lot more SMGs pulled out early in the game. A lot of teams will just run ARs just because it's the most comfortable and easy thing to do. But with our roster, we're just really adaptable and moldable to whatever meta's thrown at us. And I think everyone on our team can kind of do it all, which gives us a lot of flexibility going into the game.
Definitely agree. I think if you go back to any of these CODs, the first like 2 months, SMGs are just complaining about ARs being OP just because they haven't figured out their route. They haven't figured out their comfortable gunfight to take, where their role, their category dominates. I remember specifically in World War II, I was always asking for a PPSH buff. Like, you need a buff, it doesn't kill that good at mid-range. As the game progressed, PPSH was borderline OP. So definitely it's hard to tell, but I do think we have players that will adapt to any game. You got to adapt, and especially now with an event being in December, it's going to force you to adapt. It's not going to be like, oh, complain. Hopefully there's a patch or something like that. It's just, you just got to bite the bullet and adapt to what's given to you.
When recruiting and building a roster, I don't think you can really try and tie things back to an older Call of Duty title. People have tried to do that in the past, and rosters just seem to not work out when you try and look back toward a different game and predict how the game's going to play. All you can really do is look at the recent form of the players' mindset, and just their raw level skill, and just throw something together, because you're never going to know how the game's going to play out when you have a new game coming out every single year.
Especially early on this year, a lot of rumors came out were like, oh, you can't slide cancel, you can't do this. So I think early on players that already kind of knew that you couldn't compare to like an MW when you go into the recruiting process. But like Brian said, it's very hard to predict Call of Duties. So you can't really build a roster based on like 3 years ago. Like most teams just go based off like the previous year's success and who was very talented. And like Brian said, I think mentality is a huge thing nowadays that a lot of people view, because your mental gets beat down sometimes when you get given a Call of Duty that isn't your favorite, and it all comes down to your mental and just fighting through and playing it. So I know a lot of players just look at that now. It's like, I just want a player that's gonna grind no matter what.
Yeah, someone that just loves Call of Duty, whether it's a publicly game or a game that people enjoy.
Yeah. Something I'm really excited going into this season with this team is having 3 European players, is just kind of hearing out how they view Call of Duty and learn from them, because the last 2 years, Hanson Academy have been really smart individuals, and as a team, you know, their Ultra team had very good teamwork. We're always pretty much hyped about their comms. Like the community, every single time there's a listen is like, their Ultras comms are the best, Ultras comms are the best. So just learning from them, and then also, you know, adding my knowledge to what they already know, and hopefully just improve together.
Yeah, I'm also excited for the level of maturity with this roster. Everyone, just from our initial talks with them and meeting with them at events, I think everyone on this team has a really good and level-headed mindset, and we're not really gonna have too many lulls in the season where people are really feeling down or out of it. I think everyone's just gonna be able to put their head down and grind. And on top of that, I'm really interested in just implementing a brand new system within the team from the start with Dan and our analyst Alex. I think we've really nailed down how we want to approach the team this year, and we have a really good game plan going into the season. It's really simple. Beginning of a Call of Duty game, you just gotta grind. It's like when any new game releases, whether it's a game like Valorant, Apex Legends, Gears of War, Halo. When a new game drops, the people that are gonna excel and leap up are the ones that are just putting the most time in at the beginning. As the game progresses a little bit more and gets more fleshed out, then you can get away with putting in more focused hours instead of a quantity of hours. But the beginning of the game is kind of just about the amount of time you put in. So that first month is just a grind.
From coming from me, who half my career I had very good success the first event. It just came down to how much I played the game. Literally just played the game, learned spawns. As corny or as it is, like I just played hardpoint pubs, and those spawns are pretty similar. So I would just get comfortable with them and grind. I usually go for like the 100% challenge or like dark matter or whatever, and it helps figuring out what gun's the best. You know, you're using every single gun, and you quickly start to figure out, hey, this gun's probably gonna be the meta. Start using it, start getting comfortable with it, and yeah, just put in hours. And as far as like players, those S&D tournaments are big. I mean, the Saintt S&D wins championships. My IW Vegas team, I think we were just ahead when it came to S&D because of how many S&D tournaments we played consistently. And that's going to help you, like I said, get ahead for sure.
Call of Duty is an interesting game as well, with new titles coming out every year. I mean, you have Gladwell's Law of 10,000 hours, where you're not truly a master of something until you do it for 10,000 hours. And with Call of Duty being on a year-by-year cycle, you're never going to have someone hit that amount of hours. It usually takes 2 to 3 years, or Yeah, 2 to 3 years if you're absolutely grinding a game. But yeah, no one ever truly masters a Call of Duty title within that 1 year span. So it's gonna be interesting to see how things progress this year, since we're gonna be running the same title back in the 2024 season.
All right, thank you guys all for watching. Hope you guys enjoyed this video Brian and I put together. Just giving you guys some insight on the team and what to look forward to in the game. Make sure you like, comment, and subscribe, and see you guys next time.